I owned a diesel repair business and I would travel around our state. I live in the state of Wisconsin. I would travel around. I just did on-site diesel repair wherever diesel engines weren't easily brought into a shop. I would go on site. I had a work truck, a service truck with all my tools on it, and I would just go on site and do the repairs. And so I was working with a guy that I'd actually had known since I was very young. This guy's a lot older than me, Leonard. We worked Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Uh, got to the end of the job. If you could picture a big rectangular implement garage or truck garage shaped like a shoebox, and this big Peterbilt logging truck. Peterbilt's the brand. It's backed up into the shop. These are as big as semi truck as you'd see anywhere. I'm putting away my last couple tools, and he comes up and he tapped me on the shoulder, and he said, "I'm standing at the back of my truck. I just had a couple of tools left to put away," and he said, "Hey, before you go," he said, "could you look at one more thing?" He said, "I've got a dirty spot on the front of the engine. I know it must be seeping oil out of somewhere. Can you just diagnose where it's coming from?" And he said, "I'll either schedule to come back at a later time, or maybe it'll be something easy and you can tell me what to do, whatever, but just diagnose it." I was looking underneath the front of the truck from the front to the back, and the other mechanic, Leonard, had jacked up. There's an axle that goes from one side of the truck to the other, the front axle, and it's what connects to the two front wheels that turn when you move your steering wheel. And that axle is a big steel I-beam that goes from one side of the truck to the other. And on this particular truck, on those two front wheels, with the truck empty, no logs on it, 10 to 12,000 pounds of weight, so 5 to 6 tons of weight on the two front tires. And the wheel was in the way. We couldn't get the hoist close enough, so he had to take the wheel off. So that's when I look underneath there and I see that the jack is underneath the axle. That's got this 10 to 12,000 pounds of weight, and there's no jack stand or safety equipment. All the weight of the truck on that side is being just held by the jack, which is not the proper procedure way to do it. It should be jacks or lifting devices. You jack it up, and then you would let the weight off onto some jack stand or blocking. He didn't do it that way when he jacked it up. And to be honest, I grew up in a diesel repair shop, starting at like 10 years old, working for my dad, and there was plenty of times I did the same thing. It's just a shortcut. And so anyway, the truck has been on this jack for 3 days. It's been running 15 or 20 minutes. I look underneath there. I saw that it wasn't, properly secured, but I was like, it don't matter. It's fine. It's been running this long. I'm just going to go into there a couple minutes and be gone. So anyway, he's got it jacked up. I'm underneath it. I'm looking at the bottom of the engine. I diagnosed what I thought the oil seep was. So I yelled out to him from underneath the truck, and I said, "You can shut it off," because we still had it running to test our original repair that I was called in there to do in the first place. So I said, "Go ahead and shut it off." So Leonard gets up inside the truck, and when he did, the truck shifted. And when I turned my head to look over to see what the movement was, what I saw was the jack that had been underneath the axle had slipped out, and it's literally barely on it, and it's rocking. The truck is rocking as from the airbag, and the axle or the jack had slipped out, and it's just like barely, barely, barely touching. And before I could think, blink, or do anything, the jack shot out, and this 10 to 12,000 pounds of steel fell through the middle of my body and hit the cement because my body wasn't going to stop it. So it hit the cement over here on the left side. So if you can imagine or picture 5 to 6 tons, 10 to 12,000 pounds of steel dropping and hitting cement, that realization in your head of like what just happened, because it happened so fast, but the realization of, oh crap, this truck just fell on me. And it's like all my immediate like 911 response was, "God help me." And that's literally, so I just said that. I said, "Lord, help me." I remember saying it twice. When I say Lord, I'm referring to Jesus for me. And I'm also going to stop right here and say, a lot of times people hear this testimony and they say, "Oh, this guy must have been like this holy roller or some church guy, like super righteous, or, God brought him back from dead." All of a sudden, people think, and it's like, nothing could be further from the truth. I wasn't raised in a church home. My parents definitely believed in God, but we didn't go to church. Maybe Christmas, maybe Easter. We didn't attend church regularly, nothing like that. So I call it, I say, "Lord, help me." I said it a second time. Then I looked down and I could see that the axle had fallen through my body. It's touching the cement. I could literally reach over and touch where the axle's on the cement, because the passenger side, as I'm laying underneath the truck, the passenger side wheel was off. When I looked to my left, there was approximately an inch of airspace between the bottom of the axle and the cement. So to me, I knew that meant my body was about 1 inch thick. And according to the radiology reports, My L4, L5 vertebrae were both spider cracked and D-shaped. So I was literally thinner than my spine in the middle of my body when that truck fell on me, and a little thicker on this side because it was coming up at an angle. So it's on me. There's that little gap on each side, and this incredible pain hits me that I don't have words to describe how bad it hurt. It was just like off the charts pain. He knows it's a volunteer fire department and they're not gonna like be there immediately or anything. So he goes and gets the jack. And he's trying to figure out how he can get the truck off of my body. Didn't know it at the time, but we were told by doctors later I had 5 places that major arteries were completely severed. So as long as the truck was on me, it had all those arteries pinched off to where they couldn't bleed out, I guess. But as soon as he took the truck off of my body, I'm now internally bleeding out in these major arteries, pumping the blood out. So what that, how I felt that was as soon as he took it off my body, I mean, I had this incredible pain, but this crazy weakness is the only way I could describe it. Like this incredible weakness took over. And the doctors told me later that was because I was pumping all my blood out is why I felt weak. So this incredible weakness takes over, like to the point of like swooning, I'm barely able to hang on, like stay conscious of what I'm thinking. And I can hear my heart just pounding away, like when you're really active, but I couldn't take the next breath. I was trying so hard to take that next breath. And I remember it was so scary because I'm going like trying to suck it in and I couldn't. And my heart's going boom, 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 boom. And the weirdest thing was I literally heard my heart stop. It's going boom, 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 boom. Just like it shut off an engine. As a mechanic, when you shut off an engine, I know what mechanically it's doing. Clunk, 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 clunk. And that's just what it reminded me of, just like an engine shutting off. And on the last beat of my heart, my spirit left my body and I went up the roof of the garage. Um, I'm up 14, 15, 16 feet. And the very first thing that completely overtaken by peace. The second my spirit left, the second my heart stopped, it was all like the last beat and my spirit left. And I'm, like I said, 14, 15, 16 feet inside the garage, but all the way up into the roof. And this incredible peace that doesn't even make sense takes over. And I'm like, I don't even know how to explain it to people. So I always say, it sounds corny, but I say I was in the ceiling having a party by myself. I don't even know how else to say it because that's what it felt like. I was like, all I knew I was just by myself up there, and it was just amazing. It was the best feeling I've ever felt times a million. So I'm up there, this perfect peace, and I'm just looking down from above, and I can see. So volunteer fire department, they've come like onesie twosies as they showed up, and I'm listening to all their conversations. I'm watching everything from above. The guy that I've been working with, like I said, I'd known him since I was young. He's on his knees. I'm looking down like this at an angle like this to the front of the truck and the hood is shut and I can see my body, but I was so disconnected from the accident scene that I didn't even know that was me. It was just like I was just watching a movie. So I'm watching and I could see this guy underneath the truck and this other guy, Leonard, and he's on his knees above me and he's running his fingers turned out to be through my hair, but I didn't know at the time, through this person's hair that I'm watching from above. And he's crying and he's saying stuff like this: I should be the one that's dead, not you. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm such a fool. Because he had jacked up the truck, because he had not used the safety equipment, he felt guilty. He's saying all that stuff, but I'm up here in the ceiling in perfect peace and I could care less. I wasn't sad. I didn't feel bad. It was like, I was, it's so weird. I was completely divorced from the emotion of what was going on down there, is the only way I can say it. And so I'm just up here in perfect peace watching that, but it didn't even seem like watching a sad movie or something like that. It just seemed like whatever. So I'm just watching it, and these people are all standing around talking, the volunteer fire department, and they've called med flight. They knew there was no local hospital that could do anything for me. So they're all just standing around, but they're not going to do CPR. I don't know if I already said it or not, but at the point that my heart stopped, obviously I go up there, I've got no more heartbeat, no more pulse. So depending on which one of those people, the volunteer fire department, their stories varied. 6 to 10 minutes. No heartbeat, no pulse. So my spirit is up here, no heartbeat, no pulse in that flesh bag down there. And Leonard is above and he's running his fingers through what turned out to be my hair. He's crying. But the reason why they didn't do CPR was because I have a massive chest injury, right? So they're not going to be pushing and I did have some broken ribs and stuff. So that was a good call, right? They're not going to do CPR. So at this point, when I passed, like, they called 911. I'm sorry, they called MedFlight, and they're like, well, there's nothing else we can do. So they're just respectfully all kind of standing around. I'm watching it all happen from above. I'm looking down, I'm listening to Leonard, and on each side of Leonard is like 6'1", 6'2". He's on his knees, and on each side of Leonard was an angel, also on their knees, but their heads are like guesstimating a couple feet taller, approximately, than Leonard. So based off of a 6 foot tall Leonard, I'm saying these angels are approximately 8 feet tall. I've read the Bible now through, looked up every time it mentions angels. Angels are mentioned in the Bible like 290 sometimes from the beginning to the end. And a couple times it mentions they've got these white shining robes. It mentions that in the Bible. That's exactly what I saw. They had white robes that were like emanating light. Sometimes in the Bible, the angels have wings. Sometimes they don't. These angels didn't have wings. Just like 8 feet tall men, very muscular, with big broad shoulders, narrow waist. There was a belt on their robe. They had really long hair. I mean, sometimes I talk to church people who, get weird about guys with long hair. And it's like, I think you're going to get really surprised when you get to heaven, because I saw for sure 2 long hair angels that God has running around. And I mean, they had really long hair, like went way down. And, the one reaches over from the driver's side and he puts his hands in the middle of the flat spot. And the one from the passenger side did the same thing. So they both have their hands in the middle of flat spots. So from above, I look down, I go, oh, look, those angels are down there to help that guy. That's nice. I mean, it, it didn't, it's so weird. It didn't even seem like a big deal. It just seemed like normal. Those angels are there to help that guy. So I'm just watching. And like I said, the people from the volunteer fire department are all kind of standing around talking respectfully right there. There's Leonard, there's the angels, but nobody's, nothing's really happening. And then the last 2 people got there. And so 10 people came to the scene of an accident from this volunteer fire department. I'm going to stop here, rabbit trail a little bit. I've spent more than a year in the hospital. We added up the days. And when I got out of the hospital after this accident, I went to that volunteer fire department just to tell them thank you. So it's been at this point like 14 months at least, something like that. 15 months, 16 months, whatever it was, from the point of the accident until I go visit them. I go to their once a month little volunteer meeting at this in the middle of nowhere in this little, fire department. And there's like 30 people there. And this is over a year later. And I was able to go around the room and I picked out 8 of the 10 people out of a group of like 30. I picked out 8 of the 10 people that came to the scene of the accident. Only 2 of those people came to the scene of the accident before my heart stopped. So that means I picked out 6 people that came to the scene of the accident from a group of 30 over a year later, even though I had no heartbeat, no pulse by the time they got there. But the real, I think the most telling thing is that, the 10 people that got there, I could only pick out 8. 2 of them were easy because one was the only woman and the other one was the only gray-haired guy. And the weird thing was, as I was watching from above, everybody else had come in from the main door, just like I had for the 3 days I'd worked there, where I'd taken my truck into the front of the shop. But when these 2 people got there, they came in a back door, which is in the back of the shop, which from my point of view up in the ceiling, looking all the way to the back of the shop, this woman, red-haired lady named Shannon, the gray-haired guy, they came up the driver's side of the truck. She got down between the angels, moved Leonard out of the way. She's feeling for a pulse. But at this volunteer fire department a year later, I said to them, you came in the back door. Everybody else came in the front door. Why did you come in the back door? I mean, it was like just this weird, I don't know, random thing I was wondering about for a year. And they're like, because it had been like over a year, they couldn't even remember it first. And they're like, what? And I said, you guys came in the back door. Everyone else came in the front door. And they're like looking at each other. And then it was just this simple reason. They had missed the first driveway. There was a secondary gravel driveway. They saw the flashing lights and they just came up the back of the shop instead of the front. And it was a little, very simple, simplistic reason. But the big thing is, I think, is I was able to tell them they came in that door. And at this point, I already had no heartbeat, no pulse for minutes. So she comes in, she gets down between the angels. She's feeling for a pulse. So I'm watching from above. And in the passenger's front corner, which would be as I'm looking down to my left, was a big guy in farmer bibs. He had his arms crossed and a little guy next to him. And he tells her, the big guy says to her, it's too late. He's passed. She ignores him. She's frantically feeling for a pulse. And he says it again. It's too late. He's passed. She says, what's his name? And I'm looking from above, and the mechanic that I've been working with over here on the right now, he says Bruce Vanetta. And the lady starts saying, slapping that guy down there in the face. And she's saying, Bruce Vanetta, come back, come back. And the only way I can describe it, I didn't know it was my name. I didn't go, oh, that's me. Um, it just was like, it seemed somewhat familiar is the only way I can describe it. I wouldn't have said that's my name at all. Just somehow it sounded familiar. And she just kept saying, Bruce, when I come back, and slapping that guy in the face. And my spirit started creeping down out of the ceiling. And it seemed like when I got about half the distance between the ceiling to the ground, when I got about halfway, it went really fast. My spirit seemed to come in through the top of my head, like the top of my body, came in is what it felt like through the top. My heart, dramatic, I mean, instantaneously, my heart starts pounding, my eyes pop open, and I go from feeling the best I've ever felt in my life to now feeling the worst I've ever felt in my life. And it dawns on me that I'm the guy under the truck that I've been watching. And I was like, as soon as my spirit comes back in and this horrible pain comes, my heart starts. I just said, oh, four-letter word that means fertilizer. Oh, blank. I'm the guy under the truck, and it's me. It's me, and it hurt so bad. And I was like, it was kind of like, it's weird. It's kind of like watching like when little kids try to make cartoons with index cards and they flip them and it makes they call it, it makes the picture move as they somehow. It was like watching that in my mind, and I saw the truck fall on me, and it's like, oh crap, I'm the guy that's on it. Oh, it's me. And it hurts so bad. And I was like, oh, it hurts so bad. I don't want this. I don't want this. It hurts too bad. And that's all I kept thinking. It hurts too bad. I don't want this. My heart stopped. My spirit left my body. I went back in the roof of the garage again, 15, 16, whatever it was, feet, whatever I was with the roof of the garage. Now I look down and I know that I'm the guy in the truck. I see these two angels on each side of my body. I'm looking at them. But this time, a tunnel opened up going out of the roof of the garage, like at a 45-degree angle on this side. And it was like a million miles long. There was a bright light on the end, and I knew that it was heaven on the end of the tunnel, and Jesus was there waiting for me. And I got in the tunnel, and I started going towards the bright light. I was excited, happy to go to heaven. I knew that that's where I was going. I knew I was going to meet Jesus. I felt like I was about halfway there, and I start hearing this. Bruce going to come back. I got stopped. I got sucked backwards out of the tunnel. Now I'm looking down from above, and I can see the angels. I can see the lady, Shannon, slapping me in the face. Now I know it's me. And my spirit comes back into my body. And when it comes back into my body, again, the horrible pain comes back. And I looked to my left and I looked to my right for the angels that I just seen twice from above. And I couldn't see them with my earth eyes. And it really scared me because it hurt so bad. I'm thinking, okay, God, why would you take the angels when I need them so bad? Because it hurts so bad. I think I'm dying. Why would you take them away? It doesn't make, like, bring them back. I need those angels. And I couldn't see them with my eyes, and it was scary to me. And I remember closing my eyes, and the pain was just so overwhelming. And it was in the middle of that overwhelming pain and chaos because at this point I had been under there, no heartbeat, no pulse for however many minutes. I didn't tell you about it, but I didn't say, but Shannon, she was 38 the day of the accident. I was 36, but she had been believing in Jesus for 2 months. And somebody told her to go home and read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the 4 Gospels that talk the most about Jesus in the Bible. So for 2 months, this lady has been reading Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John at home, watching her kids. She showed up to see an accident. She literally prayed me back to life 3 times. So when I'm back in my body and I look for the angels and I can't see them, and I don't know at this point that, I don't know that she's praying. All I could hear is say, Bruce, gonna come back, come back. But I closed my eyes and it was just this horrible pain. I was thinking, I don't want this. And it was in that confusion because she had prayed me back. Before she prayed me back, all those people were just standing around like quietly talking. But once she prayed me back, they're all running around frantic, like they don't know what to do because they're all freaked out. And so things get pretty chaotic when my eyes pop open, my heart starts. And it was like I closed my eyes, and that's when I heard God speak to me. And it was this, the Bible calls it a still small whisper, and I guess that's probably the best way I could describe it. It wasn't loud. The first thing that struck me, it was very calm. That's the first thing that struck me. It was this voice was very, very calm. Everybody else was freaking out, including me, but this voice was very calm. And it simply said this: if you want to live, you're going to have to fight, and it's going to be a hard fight. And it was like, I thought about it for like 2.2 seconds. I said, screw it. I don't want to live because I don't want to fight because it hurts too bad. My heart stopped. My spirit left my body. I went up the roof of the garage the 3rd time. The tunnel opened up. I could see it. I was happy to go to heaven. I got in the tunnel. I started going to meet Jesus again. Again, I felt like I was halfway there. And again, I hear this: Bruce, trying to come back, come back. I get sucked back out of the tunnel the 2nd time. I look down. I could see the angels that I just couldn't see with my earth eyes. There they are. In the spirit, I could see him. My spirit comes back into my body, and when it does this time, again, my heart miraculously starts. Shannon's face was right here. I was still on the creeper. Her face was right about here to me. And I got my head kind of like this, and she's got her face like really close right there. And she says to me, Mister, you're on the verge of life and death. What do you have to live for? And right there on that spot, it wasn't later, it wasn't like in retrospect, but right there in that moment, I knew that I knew that I knew that it was God that had just told me if I wanted to live, I was going to have to fight. It was going to be a hard fight. I knew that same Holy Spirit, God, whatever, because I'd heard that in my head. I don't know, it's the best way I could say it. My spirit, whatever. But when she says, Mystery on the verge of life and death, what do you have to fight for? Do you have a wife and kids? I knew somehow that even though it was her voice, I knew it was God talking through her to remind me about Lori and my 4 little kids. So we had 4 children. We had identical twin boys in the middle. So we had 4 kids in 3 years or 3.5 years, whatever, because of the twins in the middle. So they were really little at the time of the accident, like kindergarten, first grade, second grade, something like that. And I remember she says, Mister, you're on the verge of life and death. What do you have to fight for? Do you have a wife? Do you have kids? Up until that moment, the pain, everything was so crazy. I had not thought about Lori. I hadn't thought about the kids, nothing. It was just over, like just this horrendous pain is all. It's like, that was everything. And then she says that, and I was like, oh my gosh, my wife needs me. My kids need me. I can't leave, because I knew that I knew that I knew every time my spirit was going up there, I was leaving. I was dying. I was going to heaven, and I was happy to go. But then God brings up through her, what about your wife and kids, basically? So then she says, don't close your eyes. Stay here and fight. So and I remember thinking, lady, you're right, because every time I close my eyes, I'm going up there. So I fought to keep my eyes open. They ended up, med flight came, med flight left. Then they called an ambulance to take the body, me, and they took me to a little small hospital, like half an hour away. The helicopter came back, picked me up there. I was only there like 10 minutes, picked me up there and took me to our state's biggest trauma center here in our state, which is like 2.5 hours away by car. And they operated on me. The 2 night shift doctors operated on me, and then the head of the trauma department got called in from home, and he rushed to the hospital to finish the surgery. And after he got done working on me they worked on me for hours. My wife is down there now, and she'd gone with some people from church and stuff, and so she's there, and the doctor comes out and he said, in all his years of running the trauma department, he'd never seen a body so badly traumatized and the person still make it to the hospital alive. And that's when he said, your husband, he says to Lori, your husband must have one hell of a will to fight, but I don't expect him to live through the hour because he's too hurt. So one of the guys, Jim, one of the guys that Lori took with her from church, said, hey, if the doctor said that he's not going to live for an hour, let's tell God thank you for every 30 minutes of life. So that's what they did all night, I guess, is told God every 30 minutes I was alive, told God thank you for 30 more minutes of life all night long. The doctor comes back to work the next morning, shocked to find I'm still alive. My wife knew that the doctor said I had all kinds of operations that needed to be done. All they did was did some general stuff at the beginning, but he said he's going to need a lot of operations. So my wife says to him when he comes and he's shocked to find me alive, are you going to go back in and start doing those other operations? And he says, he told her, I don't think his body won't tolerate it. He'll die on the operating table. So they waited another like 3 or 4 hours. My wife talked to him again. He came and checked on me again. My wife said, look, we've prayed. Go ahead and do it. We've turned him over to God. We believe, God's going to take care of him. So they operated me on and off. They kept me in induced coma. They operated me on and off for a long time, a lot. But when they went to take me out of my induced coma the very first time, I still had the breathing tube in, and I didn't know why I couldn't talk because, I'm all whacked and I don't realize there's a tube in my mouth. I'm trying to talk, and all I wanted to say was angels. That's what I wanted to tell them. It was my wife and my brother, Luke, were there that day. And when they took me out of the coma, and I just want to tell them that I saw these angels. And it was so crazy because when I was above in the spirit looking down, it didn't seem like a big deal. It seemed like normal. But when I came to, I'm alive in the hospital, I came to, and all I could think about was seeing those 2 huge angels and how they're glowing and stuff. And that's all I wanted to, that's the first thing I wanted to tell people. So then I realized I can't talk. So I motioned for something to write with, and they gave me something to write with. And I was just going to write the word angel. I couldn't write. I couldn't make the A come out of my brain to my finger. It took me like 6 months before I could read or write again. So either way, I got mad. I threw the pen or pencil, whatever it was. They tried. I couldn't breathe. They tried taking me out of the coma. My lungs weren't strong enough, so they had to re-intubate me, which is really scary. But when they did finally take me out off of the breathing machine, and I was able to talk for the first time, it's been a long time. The very, very, very first thing I said was, I saw these two huge angels. God sent two monster angels to save me. Like, it was so like shocking and surprising to me, and I just wanted to tell everybody. And that's kind of been, it's kind of what it's been for the last 18 years, is me telling this story. I hate to use the word story because it could insinuate that it's made up or embellished. It's not. Testimony is probably the better word, because it's not. I'm not making anything up. I'm not embellishing anything. This is what happened. The truck fell me. I got squished in half. I died. This lady shows up, a stranger, prays me back to life 3 times. God sends 2 angels. Then God sent a guy from New York who prayed for me in the hospital. Just thing after thing after thing after thing happened. Doctors didn't expect me to live. They said I was going to live 6 months to a year. They removed most of my intestines. I only have this little small piece of intestine left, not enough to live on. I'm being fed intravenously. I lose 65 pounds from the point of the accident until like March of '07. So however many months that is, 5 months or whatever it was, I lose 65 pounds. I'm literally dying. Getting a big fight with one of the doctors because I wanted to let me go home. And they're like, she admits, you're never going home. You're going to die here in the next 6 weeks. We can only keep you alive 6 months a year. So that's when God sent this guy from across the United States, woke him up 2 mornings early, told him to pray for me in the hospital. He did. The second morning when God woke him up, he bought the ticket and flew from New York and prayed for me. And when he did, instantaneously, right on the spot, I felt the power of God come out of his palm into my body, into my intestines. And when doctors tested it later, they said I have half my intestine now. So they say ballpark 18 to 20 some feet length of small intestine, average for average person. So I had less than 3 feet, 2 feet something after the accident. Piece died. They had to remove a little more in March. This guy shows up and prays for me, and I have now, doctors say, at least half my intestines, so at least 9 to 11 feet of intestine. They can't say for sure because they say the word they used was the small intestine is too circuitous. Layman's terms, it's a ball of worms in your right below your belly button, and because it's a ball of worms twisting upon itself, they can't measure it accurately. They can guesstimate. So guesstimation within they're accurate within a certain amount. They're guesstimating I have at least half. So God literally gave me back, 9, 10, 11 feet of intestine. Well, first he said he hates to get up early, and he was woken up at 5 a.m. 2 mornings in a row, exactly at 5 a.m. And he felt like he was woken up, like he didn't wake up, but he was woken up, and said, buy a plane ticket. Something told him, buy a plane ticket, fly to Wisconsin, pray for that guy. And he told his wife, and he worked at a church, and he told the pastor of that church. They told him both that day, but he didn't do it. And then the next morning, God woke him up again at 5 a.m. and told him. And then that day, he bought the ticket and he came. It was so much power, it actually burned. Like it stung. It was slightly uncomfortable. Well, for me, it just cements the fact that obviously God is real. God's alive and well. He's still in the miracle business. He still hears prayer. He still answers prayer. Even if we don't get the prayers answered the way we want, we have to trust that he's hearing the prayer and he's answering for our best, even when we don't agree. That which is probably the hardest part. So, I mean, again, for me, the biggest takeaway for me isn't even any of that. For me, the absolute biggest takeaway is that God loves sinners and that we can't earn it or deserve it. Because if it came down to earning a miracle or deserving a miracle, I fully believe that I'd be on the bottom of the list. I'd be like last place. So if God would do, all I said was, Lord, help me. If he'd send angels for me, if he'd send a lady to bring me back to life, and all I said was, Lord, help me, and I know that I don't deserve it, then what he says about mercy, meaning him blessing us and loving us and being good to us, even though we don't deserve it or can't earn it, then it's true. It's completely true for me, because I know that I am totally undeserving. I didn't deserve it before the accident. I don't deserve it after the accident. I still have anger issues. I still got other issues. Like people like, oh, after God had you prayed back to life, I bet your life's great and you probably don't struggle or, don't have issues. And I was like, no, I'm just like, oh, you guys still struggle. I still have issues. And I think I honestly think that's part of the biggest part of the miracle is that, it wasn't like he came back and saved a pastor or it wasn't like he brought back like, Mother Teresa or a nun or somebody that's righteous. No, he brought back a stinky old smelly biker that has done lots of bad stuff in my life and don't deserve anything good from God, and yet he still did it. So, um, again, God's mercy is for me the biggest takeaway for me personally. The doctor who was an atheist was the one who told us he had looked up studies, and he said there's nobody else that's lived that anywhere in the world that we can find with the number of arteries that were severed in you. And he said you should have bled about the time that your spirit left your body, and you say you no more heartbeat, no more pulse. That's the time you should have bled out and died with 5 places of major artery severed, because there's no place to put a tourniquet, no place to stop the bleeding. So it's just going to bleed out internally. And so he said to me at the time, that he was going to figure out why I lived, and then he was going to be able to use that information to help others, around the world, which is a very noble thought. But I remember the day that he called me a year later after the accident, and it was closure for him, because he said, all right, we have studied your case daily for the last year. I'm done. It's a university hospital. He goes, I'm done. We're not going to talk about it, discuss it, because he had told me, I think he's a man of his word. And he had told me, I'm going to find out how you lived with 5 places of major artery severed, and then I'm going to use that information to help others with, and then 1 year later, he's like, I don't have an answer. I'm done. I'm not even going to look anymore. It's done. But I think because he's a man of word, and because he told me he was going to figure it out, he felt like he had to call me and tell me he couldn't. And I remember telling him on the phone that day, I remember saying, hey, I told you, I saw the angels. That's what it was, and so everybody gets to make a choice. You, me, him, everybody gets to make a choice if we're going to believe in God, and we've got to make a decision about our eternal destiny here in this life. And for me, that means Jesus. That means I know I'm a sinner. I believe what the Bible says, that Jesus died for my sins. He rose again 3 days later, conquered sin, death, and devil. And for those that receive his forgiveness, we get to be his children and spend eternity with him. And if we reject him, he doesn't reject us. I have so many people tell me their near-death or out-of-body experiences. A Christian has this preconceived notion or belief that when they die, they're going to see angels, or they're going to go to heaven, and they die and they come back like, oh yeah, I saw angels in heaven. You go like, okay, that's what you thought was going to happen. Big deal. But when the person who says, I don't believe any of that, dies and then has an opposite experience of what they believe, and they come back and say, guess what? It's exactly opposite what I thought. To me, that holds validity, because there's a change. Something, it's not a preconceived notion of thought. You change from what you did believe to what you believe now because of something you experienced. That's impactful to me. That screams reality to me. God is real. He loves us despite us. My story, it's mercy. We can't earn it. We don't deserve it. And I really feel bad for, I go and share this testimony at churches and stuff a lot of times, schools, jails. My favorite place is to go to jails. My absolute favorite place to share to jails, because honestly, I feel comfortable around those people, and they feel comfortable around me, and they feel me right away, and they're like, oh, he's one of us. The guys in jail are like, oh, this joker, he's just like us. We just know, we could tell this guy grew up like we did. He lived the same life we did. He's made a lot of bad choice decisions. He's a potty mouth. Oh, this guy's just like us. I go to the church, and they're like, he doesn't feel like a church guy. This guy, I don't know, he doesn't feel like a church guy. Well, because I'm not really a church guy. I'm just this guy that had this crazy experience with God. I believe all that stuff is true. And it's not like, I don't know. At church, people get together a lot of times like, oh, we're so good, we don't sin, everything's so great. And they play church, leave, get in a fight with their wife, swearing at their kids. It's like, you know what? Why not just admit who you are on the front side instead of playing games and just pretending and all this stuff? But whatever, that's a rabbit trail. I'm just, again, I just want to let everybody know. And it's not just people at churches, it's everybody in the whole world. God is alive and well. He loves us all, despite us, despite our sin, despite our last name. My last name means trouble. I was the kid getting kicked out of school all the time, kicked off the bus all the time. So God loves sinners like me. And I guess that's my message, that God loves us all, despite us. I felt like I had free will every time I left. But every time I got sucked back, it felt like it was going against my free will. That's what it felt like. I had like I said, I don't want this, and my heart would stop and I'd leave. But then I wanted to go to heaven, but I was getting sucked backwards. And even when that lady prayed me back, and I knew the third time, like, she was you know, responsible for making me be there. And I was not happy about it because that's what I wanted until she said, what do you have to fight for? You have wife, kids, and that's what made me want to stay. So
Right.
my free will
Okay.
is to leave, to leave, to leave. I felt like it was against my free will to come back until God used her to remind me about my wife and kids, and that's what made me say, okay, I want to stay now. So, okay, if he's spirit, and the Bible says that we have a spirit inside of us, the majority of the time God is going to talk spirit to spirit. So what's that look like? I could tell you example. I'll just give the last 2 weeks. In the morning, I read through the Bible every year, and I spend that time in the morning reading the Bible and then just praying and listening. Okay, so here's this one. So that's during the time where God will tell me who to call or whatever, things that it's on his heart. And it's just a thought that drops in my head, right? So this family here, I'm praying last week, and multiple times this family drops in my head. And it's a family where adult children, husband and wife. The husband used to race motorcycles with me. He died. He's no longer alive, but his widow is, and their adult children that are married with kids. And God just keeps telling me last week, pray for them, pray for them. And I was like, okay, but I wasn't given any specific. It was during my morning time. And so then I just kept praying. So then I just pressed in a little bit more, like, so then one of the adults is a girl married with 2 little boys, and the other adult is a son married with 2 little boys. And God highlights the girl, and he says, pray for her. So I'm praying for the adult daughter and the family, but I don't know about what. I'm just praying for her. And it's like, I'm not sure. So it's so strong on me. I text the mom, and I say, hey, uh, in my quiet time, I'm praying for you. And I don't know what's going on, but it's really strong. How is your family? And I was thinking about the daughter, and I was wondering, maybe she's having marital issues. I didn't know. So I'm like, I don't know, maybe it's their marital problems or something. But I don't want to come out and say that in the text. So I just say, hey, how's your kids? How's your family? I'm being felt led really strongly, and that's the word I use, to pray and intercede for you guys. What's going on? And she just responds back. She goes, everything's fine. Um, nothing's going on. I was like, okay, that's kind of weird. 2 days later, the girl calls and leaves a message, and she sends a text. She's gets in a crazy accident with her 2 kids. Her car gets totaled out. The other car gets totaled out, and they miraculously survive a miracle. Somebody pulled out point blank in front of them. They hit them at like 60 miles an hour. Somebody pulled right up from them, and her and her kids smash into this car point blank at like 55, 60 miles an hour, and they walk away. She had one little tiny burn, and the kids are like nothing, even though the car is totally smashed. The other car is totally smashed. So she sends back, and she's like, hey, my mom said that God had told you to pray for us. And I said to her, I said, look, I respond back. I said, actually, it was specifically for you and your family, but I didn't want to say that, to your mom. It can be weird and whatever. So like, that's an example. So like you said, what does it look like? There's a perfect example that happened just this week of me being told to pray for somebody, not knowing why I reach out. So, I'll just, there's lots. Uh, God says, this guy about his wife. So God tells me to pray. God showed me something about this guy's wife, and it was like 2 months ago. This was not this week. This was last week. And in the right there where I sit right there in that rocking chair and read that Bible right there every morning, and God says, call him and tell him what you saw in the spirit that day when you were preaching at their church. And so I call him and tell him what I saw in the spirit that day over his wife, and he tells me, oh, what a coincidence. I saw that exact same thing over my wife this morning, and it freaked me out. And I ended up praying about it. And all it was God had me call him. This has been a month, 2 months since I even see these people at a church in a whole other state, to tell them what I saw, to tell the husband what I saw, because God opened his spiritual eyes and let him see it that same morning. And all it did was confirm to him that what he saw was real. Because if I
Wow.
wouldn't have called, he'd still be questioning, going, did I really just see that, or was that in my head? It's
Yeah.
like that. It's like day after day, day after day after day, stuff like that. What the heck is going on? I'm sitting here reading my Bible and praying, and God won't let me move on. He said, call you. And I say to the guy, what is going on? Like, literally, and I'm not trying to be a jerk or sound selfish, but I guess I am selfish. And I'm telling him, hey, look, I'm praying for me and my family right now, and God keeps stopping me and telling me to pray for you. And I don't know what's going on with you, so I'm just going to stop praying, trying to pray for me and my family, to call you and ask you what's going on, so I can at least move on and pray for my family. What's going on? And he pukes it out and says, oh, you wouldn't believe what's going on right now today, XYZ. So I mean, that's what it looks like when God talks to me, and just, but it's for everybody. That is exactly what he has for everybody. It's just those thoughts. It's not like this voice that came in through my ear. It's a thought that drops in my head that isn't for me. And I go, wait a minute, where'd that crazy? Why would I call him? I haven't talked to him for 2 minutes. And and then you call and you find out exactly why. That's what it looks like. And God does it like daily. Lauren, how do you get to know anybody? Spend time with them. Only way you get to know anybody in the whole world is to spend time with them. And it includes God. So how do you get to know God? Well, the Bible says in John that Jesus is the Word made flesh. So the Word means the Bible. So when you spend time reading the Bible, you're spending time with God. Some people go like, oh, dude, do I have to read the Bible? No, you don't have to read the Bible. You get to read the Bible. And the more you read the Bible, you're spending time with God, the more you get to know who he is, get to know him, get to recognize his voice. So when he drops that thought near you, go, oh, wait a minute. That wasn't me. That must have been God. And you pick up the phone and you do whatever he says to do, or you go, you make that thing. So the easy part, I'm being dead serious. The easy part is hearing God's voice, because it just simply comes down to, are you going to spend time with him? No, that's a sacrifice. You have to sacrifice time. For me, it's an hour every day. And people go, oh, yeah, it's because you're a pastor, or I'm not a pastor. I would never call myself a pastor. But they're like, oh, because you're in full-time ministry, you don't really have a real job. You just sit around all day. You don't do anything. You just talk like on Sundays. So, of course, you get to read the Bible. And it's like, no. When I was running a multi-million-dollar business with 17 employees, the only way that I could have a good day is to spend my first part of my day with God. And he proved it to me over and over. And if I'd skip it, if I didn't spend time reading the Bible and praying and talking to him, something bad would happen that day. And it got to be like, I hate to say it, but like an insurance, like almost like doing my devotion in the morning, spending time with God is like an insurance for the rest of the day that it's going to go okay. And so the easy part is getting to know God's voice because you spend time with him. Honestly, here's the hard part: obeying. That's the hard part. I hear God's voice pretty clear because I spend an hour with him every morning. He talks to me all the time. And anybody that spends time with God, it's nothing. There is nothing special about me at all. It is simply just a product of doing something. If you do something enough, if you ride a bike good enough, you're going to get a ride good. You're going to learn how to ride a bike. It's just a product of doing something. I spend time with God. I can hear his voice. The hard part is being obedient. That's the hard part for me. He could tell me to do something, and I'll be like, I don't really want to do that. Or to say, you really shouldn't do that. I'm like, yeah, but I kind of like doing that. Like human nature, human flesh. The easy part is to get to hear God's voice. The hard part is obeying. Anybody that spends time with God is going to hear his voice. It's that simple. It's just a product of spending time with him. Just like anybody else. You spend time with anybody else, you get to know them, you'll know them. But it's the same thing with God, but obeying is the hard part. Oh, I don't know. They can Google my name, Bruce Van Natta. Go to our website, sweetbreadministries, plural.com or .org. Written a couple books. One of them was a Christian bestseller, Saved by Angels, to share how God talks to everyday people is the full title. Accident, to share how God talks to everyday people. Really, that's the lane that he's given me to run in. The main message that I come back to a lot is what it looks like to hear God's voice. I coach people in that. Both the books I wrote, full books that I wrote, really dive into that. The first book, that's what the whole book is about, really. But I mean, once you get that relationship, it's simply a product of spending time to just simplify it. Relationship with God is simply a product of spending time with him. It's that simple. So people can hear about that book, or A Miraculous Life was the follow-up book to that. But they can Google Bruce Van Natta on YouTube, or there's, like you said, there's plenty of places that have taped stuff that I've been and given messages. So